Hello everyone, welcome back to this specific channel and thank you for tuning in. Today in this episode, in this lecture, we are going to look at something new, and that something new is what we call pharmacy laws and regulations. The pharmacy laws and regulations is a part or one of the course units that students pursuing a bachelor's in pharmacy, certificate in pharmacy, and diploma in pharmacy are taught or are given or are taught. I think the right word is taught. So the person presenting to you is by names Miss Atiang Grace. If it is your first time tuning into this channel, tuning in for these lectures, I want to encourage you and I thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your effort to learning. I appreciate the zeal that you have to learning and knowing much about your program and knowing much about your course. So the person presenting, as I said, is by the names that you can see before you at the screen. And I am so delighted to have you at Grapham Academy. Feel at home. You are most welcome and we love you and we thank you so much for supporting and making more videos like this that we're having today. So pharmacy laws, we are going to look at a number of things, and one of them appreciating the fact that pharmacy doesn't stand on its own. It is dependent on a number of rules, a number of ethics, a number of laws that enable it move forward, that enable it progress. So we have a number of them that we are going to look at today and see that why are things happening the way they are. It is because of what we didn't know about what has to be done and what has to happen. So that is why we are going to look at a number of things. And that is the overview for this specific lecture today, since it is our first lecture of pharmacy laws and regulations. We are going to look at the overview of pharmacy profession and pharmaceutical industry. We shall also look at the history of pharmacy globally, and then we are going to look at the history of pharmacy in Uganda, because it is our country and we need to know more about our country. For others who don't know, Grapham Academy is based or comes from a country in Africa that is called Uganda. Africa is a continent that has different countries, just like other continents that also have so many other countries. So Africa is not a country. Some of us look at it as a country. However, it is not. It is a continent. So Uganda is a pearl of Africa and a very interesting place. We are going to look at the history of pharmacy in Uganda, the history of pharmacy globally, and then we are going to define some common terms that we have or that we are going to interact with under pharmacy laws and regulations. We are going to look at ethics. What are the ethics? What are the ethics of a pharmacy professional? What do we expect? How do we expect a pharmacy professional to behave? How do we expect a pharmacy professional to conduct themselves? And then we are going to look at laws, where we shall look at the types of laws and then the sources of laws. Then we are going to look at the statutes. We are going to know what is the meaning of that. We are going to look at the act and ordinance. And then we shall look at the courts and the felony. We shall look at the rights, responsibilities, and torts. And then we are going to look at ethics or differences between ethics and laws. And that will mark the end of our first lecture. So we shall look at the history of pharmacy globally. How did pharmacy come about? Who are the people who thought about it? How was it first called the first time? So you find this is not a detailed information on how the history of pharmacy came about. However, it gives you an insight and also encourages you to research more on how it is started, on how it came. You see that it came or it started long time ago, that is in 400 BC. Where we have someone by the name Diclos or Cyprus or Citrus, okay, or Kaistas, depending on how you can pronounce the word, was a Greek member of this specific Union, which they call the ri- the rhizotomy the rhizotomio. Excuse me if I don't pronounce based on your expectation. Don't mind me. So you look at the rhizotomio is a specific branch of medical experts on the uses of medicinal plants during their time, that is the 400 BC, whereby the Pendanium Dioscorides wrote a 5-volume work entitled The Demeteria Medica, meaning concerning medicinal substances. It is a source for the medieval pharmaceutical medicines in Europe as well as the Islamic world. There are different countries in the Islamic world. It's not a world of its own, or we can talk about it as a continent or countries. And you see that these traces come about from the history of pharmacy, and they give us an insight of the history of pharmacy back from the early Egyptians or the pharaoh. We know the government of Egyptians those days, BC, 400 BC and other BCs, was based on the pharaohs, or their kings were called pharaohs. So we see that this was practiced more in Egyptian countries, or in Egypt is a country of its own, where we see that the Egyptians had a number of series or documents concerning medicinal plants, concerning how we can extract, concerning what treats what can treat this, which plant is effective for this specific condition, and they also had other things. Okay, so we also see that this specific information also included the Kahun papyrus of 2000 BC, which dealt with veterinary medicines. Okay, papyrus, basing on how you can pronounce it, and they can tell us based on the nursery school. So we see that which dealt with veterinary medicines. So, like I said, there are a number of insights or information on how pharmacy was started globally. That is like an insight that we can have that will enable us to research and work on it more and find out more. However, for the history of pharmacy in Uganda, we see that the pharmaceutical sector in Uganda has evolved over the last 15 years, 15 to around 20 years from where we are now. That is where we see that from 2 large manufacturing plants registered in the mid-90s, 1990s is when it started up, to the current 4 large, 6 medium, and 1 small-scale manufacturers. Although the sector continues to expand, we see that there are a number of other manufacturers that are coming up, and facilities that are coming up, which are able to extract medicines from natural sources like plants, animals, and the rest. We have a number of natural sources, not only plants, we also have animal natural source. Okay, so an example of a new manufacturing unit or a small scale manufacturing unit, we can talk about the company of that manufactured for us Covidex. Okay, in the season where we had COVID-19, we see that we had a specific internal manufacturer who is a pharmacy professional, an expert, a PhD holder, or a professor in a field of pharmacognosy, was able to bring out something new, something great, that was what we call Covidex, and it responded in management of patients who had these signs and symptoms, or presenting with signs and symptoms of COVID-19. So we find that everything has changed. So many things have changed. Sectors have come up. People have gained knowledge. People have understood and know the different sources of medicines, and they are able to extract. They are able to separate out the active component, which is manufactured, which is transferred or transformed. Yes, I think the right word is transformed to medicine. Although the sector continues to expand, like it's growing, with the establishment of 2 new large pharmaceutical facilities or manufacturers. One of it is the Quality Chemicals Industries Limited, that is located at Luzera. We find that it is a big industry within the country that carries out preparation of tablets, dosage form, or we can say the solid dosage forms. And then we have Abacus, which is majorly for Parenteral Drugs Limited, or we can say the name of the facility is Abacus Parenteral Drugs Limited, which majorly deals in preparation of parenteral preparations, and then sterile preparations, for example, eye drops, sterile eye drops, and other things, other parenteral preparations. In the last 2 years, the country still imports over 90% of its essential medicines and health facility. However, the country is looking forward to seeing that it at least reduces the percentage of essential medicines that it gets from outside the country, and focuses on much of the production or internal production that will also lead to export, internal production for export and internal production for consumption within the country. So you find that the country is determined in growing in the field of pharmacy. The country is determined in exploring more on how the internal products can be utilized, the internal raw materials that we have. The country is rich. The country is rich of the raw materials that we can use for preparing a number of these essential medicines. So the country is working on it, and soon things will be different, and pharmacy will have been appreciated by a number of people. However, most people don't know it so much because of the number of the pharmacy professionals within the country. And then I can talk about the guidance of the young about the profession. You find, but with time, it is going to be better, and even the percentage of imports of essential medicines and other necessary medicines and health supplies will increase. In the season of coronavirus, the country was in position to manufacture, to prepare their own hand sanitizers, alcohol hand sanitizers, and it was able to supply internally and also export it. Okay, so that is majorly the history of pharmacy in the field of the history of pharmacy in Uganda, not in the field of pharmacy. Excuse me about that. The history of pharmacy in Uganda briefly is like that about our country. So we need to define a number of terms, and these are the terms that we need to define. One is what we call act. What is an act? A full text of some legislative writing which lays out the entirety of what the legislature has voted on and agreed to. An act, the legislature's writing. And before a legislature writes, we know the different arms of governments in our different countries. We have the judiciary, we have the legislature, and then or legislative or legislature, and then we have which other one? So when we look at legislative branch or arm of the government is a law forming arm. Okay, so when a law or before a law is passed out, it has to be agreed by a specific group of people. It has to be voted on. Okay, it has, like, people sit and discuss, is it worth to have this happen? And they discuss basing on the information they have and information that they know. So they carry out research about what they have to discuss about, and then see whether it is right to defend the motion or not to defend it. So if so many people agree and go with it, you find that that they write something down. So whatever they write down, based on what people have voted and agreed, is what we call an act, an act of parliament, an act of this, an act of that. And then we have what we call a bylaw, a law made by local authorities, and as a result, is only enforceable in that particular local authority catchment area. So a bylaw is only made by a specific authority. However, an act is not only working on a catchment area, it is also working, like, for example, the whole country. It works for the whole country as long as that body affects, or that body entirely operates based on that act. Okay, and then we have what we call policy, a system of principles to guide decisions and achieve rational outcomes. It is a statement of intent and is implemented as a procedure or protocol. That is a policy. Okay, it is principles of guidelines. It is principles that guide decisions that people are going to make. And what is the main aim of having those principles is to achieve a rational outcomes. And then we have what you call ethics. Ethics are morals that guide people about what is good or bad. So you find that every profession has different ethics and it guides them on what is good and bad. A medical professional is ought to behave in a specific manner, so their ethics guide them on how to conduct themselves, on how to communicate to clients or to patients, on how to handle patients. Okay, so those are ethics. So you find that the ethics in the medical field is not the same as the ethics that maybe we have in the army, that we have in the other departments. Okay, so you find that how an army personnel is ought to behave, or what guides them on how they behave, is not the same way on how a pharmacist, on how any other medical cadre has to behave. Are we together? So that's ethics. It is a collection of fundamental concepts and principles of an ideal human character. The principles help us in making decisions regarding what is right or wrong. Ethics are the code of conduct agreed and adopted by people. People agree to it. They say it is okay for us to do this. It's okay for us to behave like this. We need to respect our patients. We need to make sure that all patients get equal responsibilities. All patients get equal advantage and the rest. Okay, so those are definition of terms. Definition of terms of we have more other terms, but these are some of them. In the next slide, we are going to look at other terms. So by the end of this specific slide, you should know what an act is, what a bylaw is, what policy is, and what ethics is, just by common understanding. So as we continue, we see we have other terms, that is law. What is a law? A system of rules that a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members and may be enforced by the imposition of penalties. Okay, so a system of rules. For example, schools have rules and regulation. However, with a specific body, the rules that will guide them on what is right on what is wrong, they call it a law. Okay, and a law still is made by, or is passed by, or passed by what we call a legislative part or branch of the government. Then we have what we call regulation. Regulation, essentially a law, but which draws its light not from the decision of the legislative assembly directly. A rule of order having the force of law prescribed by a superior or competent authority, regulating the actions of those under the authority's control. So I think this is a bit self-explanatory. And you see that regulation is the act of controlling. And then a statute is a specific codified statement of some law that has been approved by the legislative body and often endorsed by executive body of government. I was telling you about the different bodies or branches of government. We have the executive, we have the legislative, and we have the judiciary. Okay, so the judiciary deal with the judge whereby it is aided by what we call a chief justice. And then we have legislative, as I was telling you in the previous slide. The legislative is a law forming body of the government. Okay, forming the acts, forming the regulations, forming laws. You find that they are in charge of forming. However, the executive body, where we find that the big person or the person heading that body is the president of that country. It is in position to make or to pass out what we call a statute from the word state. Okay, they are passing out a statute which is a specific codified statement of some law that have been approved by the legislative body. After the legislative body has approved it, and it has to be endorsed by executive body of the government. If the legislative body approves it without endorsement of the executive body, it ceases to be a statute. Okay, I don't know whether we are picking it. So we have ordinance is a local law. Ordinance is a local law, and then court is a person or a body of persons having judicial authority to hear and resolve disputes in civil, criminal, and military cases. When you say we are going to court, the people you're going to meet in court are those people who have the authority to hear you out, to hear issues that have taken you to court, okay, to hear what maybe your friend has done to you. Is it a civil law? Is it a criminal law? Is it a military case? So that is court. A felony is a crime punishable by death or imprisonment in the excess of 1 year. A right is a moral or a legal entitlement to have or do something. Responsibility is an opportunity or ability to act independently and take decisions without authorization. That is a responsibility. Are we together? A tort is a civil wrong act that causes a claimant to suffer loss or harm, resulting in legal liability for the person who commits the act. Is a civil wrong act that causes a claimant to suffer loss or harm, resulting in legal liability for the person who commits the act. So we have types of laws. We have what you call a criminal law. It's a system of laws that is concerned with the punishment of individuals who commit the crime. For example, a law on theft or murder is a criminal law. To kill, it is against or it is a criminal law, okay? And then it is a law between a person and the government, or you have not followed the different what the constitution of your country states. So when you break whatever acts, whatever information that is in your constitution of your country, it becomes a criminal law. Okay, the law between an individual and the government. And then we have the civil law. is a law that regulates disputes between private individuals. For example, if I have a problem with another person, and it is we are not breaking the law of the constitution, you find that that becomes a civil law. It is between different people. It is between different private individuals. But a criminal law, you have broken. For example, when you're at school and you're quarreling with your friend in the same school, maybe on your personal issues, you find that we can take it as a criminal law. I mean, sorry, please, a civil law. But in case you break the school rules and regulation, you're going to be handled by the school disciplinary committee. Okay, for example, there are a number of depending on the rules and regulations of that specific school, you can break those rules. So when you break those rules, I can put it as a criminal law. I'm using a school or taking a country as an example of a school, so that you pick out what a criminal law is and what a civil law is. Okay, so you find that maybe missing out class, if maybe in the rules and regulation are saying if you don't attend 70% of the lectures, maybe you don't sit for your exams, and then you don't really get the 70%, you have been late without even any reason, you have performed like a criminal law. It is against the rules and regulations, so you are punishable by the school. So when you look at you and your friend having beef with yourselves, and maybe you're having misunderstanding between yourself, that is your own thing. You sit down and talk it out. You find maybe one of your other friend comes in to help you talk things out, so that becomes what we call a civil law. Okay, so when we look at the country, when we go when we perform things that are against the constitution, we are performing, or we are charged for or we call that a criminal crime. Okay, and then this other one is a civil one. I hope we have got something. Administrative law is a body of laws created by agencies and departments of the government which carry out the laws passed by the Congress or state. That is to say taxes and then licensing, that is administrative. So we find that pharmacy has a body, so that specific body puts out laws that govern the body, so it becomes an administrative body that is for the specific department. Okay, and be the health, ministry of health and the rest. So sources of law, we can get the laws in the constitution. We see that laws are made basing on the constitution, and then the statutes, laws are made by the state legislatures. Hope I'm reading things well. Case, we see that laws are made basing on the court interpretation of the cases, and we saw what a court is. And then administrative regulations is also part of the sources of law, where it looks at the rules and regulations adopted by administrative agencies that have the force of law. From this, they make laws that will govern them. So differences, this is our last part of this specific lecture. We are looking at the differences between laws or law and ethics. So ethics and laws, they are not the same. They are completely two different things. So the law is defined as a systematic body of rules that governs the whole society and the actions of its individual members. Ethics means the science of the standard human conduct. The systemic body makes rules that govern them. Ethics become the science of the standard how are you ought to conduct yourself as a medical personnel, as a pharmacy personnel, as a pharmacy technician, as a pharmacy assistant. How are you ought to conduct yourself? That is ethics. And then the law, what have they put in place to govern you as a pharmacy technician, as a pharmacy assistant, as a pharmacist, okay, and other cadres. I'm basing on pharmacy because we are dealing with pharmacy laws. Yeah. Then the law consists of the set of rules and regulations, whereas ethics comprises of guidelines and principles that inform people about how to live or how to behave in a particular situation. The law is created by the government. On the other hand, ethics are governed by an individual, legal or professional norms. For example, all that is to say workplace ethics, environmental ethics, and so many other ethics. Okay, so a law is expressed in the Constitution in a written form, as opposed or while our ethics, it cannot be found in a writing form. A branch of law may result in punishment or penalty, both which is not in the case of the breach of ethics. Okay, the breach of law results into punishment. For example, if it's a criminal law, you are maybe put